All right, folks, we're back with more Galakrond's Awakening cards to review, including this legendary.
Hey, buddy, watch this.
That's right, we got a few new cards here in this video and some insights as well, I guess, into the legendary model. A lot of people thought we were going to get 4 hero cards, but it's been confirmed there are only going to be 4 legendaries. This one's obviously not a hero card, so I guess we're not getting a hero card for every heroic class as some people expected, but we are getting Grand Lackey here. Another Lackey synergy card to close out this year, the dragon, I guess. And he's a 4-mana neutral 2/3, and he reads, after you play a Lackey, add a Lackey to your hand. So a pretty interesting way here to generate a lot of additional in-hand value. If you can stack up, 4 or 5 Lackeys and play this guy in the late game, make like an 8 or 9 mana turn, you're basically going to get to retain, all of that Lackey value while still doing crazy things to the board like Lackeys tend to do. Now, I will say this is definitely more of a value play than a tempo play. It's pretty unlikely you'd want to play this on like turn 4 and try to set up something in the early to mid game just because the stats on this body are so weak. So it is going to be, relegated or limited more specifically to, I think, those mid to late game style plays where you want to play this with at least, maybe 2 to 3 Lackeys in a given turn, which will limit the scope of it a little bit. Some decks may not feel like they need that much value, and they're utilizing their Lackeys far more for aggression and tempo. So not every deck, I think, that runs Lackeys will inherently want to do this, but there are certainly some decks that can shift into more of that late game Lackey style. Even something like, a Galakrond Rogue who's making so many Lackeys can play a little bit later in the game, and they could draw this for 0 mana and do some pretty ridiculous sorts of things. So I could see this fitting into that kind of environment. I could also, frankly, see it getting cut because they make so much value anyway out of all their Lackeys. Maybe this would just be overkill and would be doubling down on something they don't really need any more of, but also keep an eye on things like Shaman. Maybe this finally helps like Dark Pharaoh Takan get off and find some real play in this new meta. And that means that, yeah, this looks like an absolutely playable card. It's giving back enough. I've kind of come to this point where anytime I doubt something that does Lackey stuff, I regret it because Lackeys are just so good and so strong that I kind of have to put some degree of faith in this card because I have to imagine some deck just cares enough. And I think this gives you back enough that it'll get there. But I don't think this is like a 5-star home run kind of card because it does have some checks on its power level, both from a mana and stat standpoint, but also just on a kind of context or fit standpoint. So really good, probably, but not like really, really good. So next up here we have the Winged Guardian for Druid. Super sick looking character here. 7 mana, 6/8 beast, apparently. I've never seen that particular beast in the wild, but hey, it's a taunt and reborn card that can't be targeted by spells or hero power. So typically with Reborn, you don't love it on high cost stuff as much because you spend 7 mana, that like 1 health coming back on the Reborn isn't that good. But this card adds can't be targeted. So it's actually fairly immune to things like Mage's hero power that might normally very efficiently ping off that remaining 1 health. Now, of course, there are still a lot of 1/1s and Lackeys and little battle cry effects that are pretty good at dealing with that Reborn regardless of its can't be targeted nature. So that does still limit this a little bit. I don't think the Reborn's all that significant, but even just a 7 mana 6/8 can't be targeted isn't that bad. It's not the end of the world, and there are some cool beast synergies in Druid that this could maybe help get off the ground. And beyond that, it's also just a big unit, and we have seen things like Embiggen decks and even some side quest druids as well that care about just playing big stats and getting big taunt summoned for free. So I do see a couple different decks that could successfully utilize the Winged Guardian. It's still got a lot of things to compete against, like, maybe just an evasive Draconid would be better in a big taunt druid because it does the same kind of thing, but it's also maybe got some dragon synergies that matter. So it's got some competition to figure out as well. I don't think this is an automatic natural inclusion in any one of those given decks, which generally means, a higher mana cost card that's a little bit awkward. It's probably not going to get there in most cases, but it does still have a couple angles that make sense. So I think this is a playable card, just not a particularly amazing one compared to some of its peers or where it fits into the Druid world. So next up here we have Air Raid for Paladin. I love this artwork, it's really cool. New 2 mana spell with Twin Spell, and it will summon you 2/1/1 Silverhand Recruits with Taunt. And I like this card. I think it's a really good early game consistency option for decks that care about flooding the board with minions. We've found some success with that recently in faster paladins, things like even a side quest paladin get really cool with a card like Air Raid. And because it's giving you the 2-for-1 with Twin Spell, that's what makes it so consistent. Like it's, you know, coin Air Raid into Air Raid would be an amazing opener. Even just like an Air Raid on turn 3 sometimes is kind of okay if you just have to play something. You know, on turn 4, you get 4 1/1s. That's solid. It just gives you consistent ways to go wide. And I think we've seen a lot in the past. Any card that does that, that offers you ways to just keep reloading, is quite successful. And Paladin is a class that has been able to utilize that well in the past. Obviously, we've seen a lot of Dude Paladins now. Dude Paladin right now isn't as good as it used to be. I don't know if this makes the cut in Wild because odd stuff might just be better. But I do still think this is the kind of card that just makes sense a lot of the time. Of course, from a raw standpoint, like 2/1/1 Silver End Recruits isn't amazing for 2 mana. There's other cards that have done better things more comparably, you know. But the fact that you get to do it twice, it's consistent, it fits Paladin really well. There are always potential Silverhand Recruit synergies that exist out there as well. All of those things to me mean this card probably just gets there eventually. I think it does a lot of things really well and looks like a solid card. And then finally here we have the Aeon Reaver for Priest, a new 6-mana 4/4 dragon with a battle cry that will deal damage to a minion equal to its attack. Now that is the attack of the minion that it's dealing the damage to. So as we saw in the video, if it hits a King Crush, it's going to deal 8 damage to that King Crush. So anytime you have a minion with symmetrical stats, this guy's going to kill it. Or if it's a higher attack orientation than defense, this guy is going to kill it outside of, you know, Divine Shields, whatever else. So that makes this a very powerful turn 6 swing card in a lot of cases. It can deal with big threats. It can often even deal with early threats. Just, you know, get rid of that 3/3 to help you swing the board. That's the kind of thing Priest is probably lacking in some of its like Dragon / Galakrond decks right now. And I think Aeon Reaver could really, really help a Dragon Priest come together more successfully to help it survive those mid-game turns to start gaining some dominance in the late game where Priest generally tends to thrive. So yeah, this card just looks great, you know, in that kind of Firelands Portal vein, kind of a Vile Spine Slayer, almost like a Flick in a way, of course, not hitting everything, but it just takes that good trade on board. A Flick hitting 1 minion's often really good right now for tempo. Aeon Reaver is going to do the same thing. And because it has this flexibility, it hits a lot of stuff. Now, of course, it's not universal like Vile Spine Slayer or Flick. There are some downsides. You know, if there's a Boulder Fist Ogre, it's only going to deal 6 to the Ogre. And Priest can have a little bit of trouble cleaning up those like low health total things. Priest doesn't have an inherent ping in their deck or class, for instance. So is that downside going to hurt this card? I don't think it's going to hurt that much. I think there's still plenty of upside, and it offers Priest something a little different and unique that makes it good. So for me, Aeon Reaver still gets there. It's, again, not a perfect card. It's kind of the theme for this video, but it's a solid work-style card. It's going to get stuff done, and I'm sure a Priest deck eventually will find a home for this guy because we have seen a handful of good Dragon stuff come along. Not that it necessarily needs to be in a Dragon deck. It works fine on its own too, but since it has that Dragon tag, it can kind of help slot into that package pretty nicely and support some of those other Dragon synergy cards, Breath of the Infinite style stuff. So whether it's on its own, whether it's in a Dragon deck, just a control deck that needs another tool to swing boards in the mid-game, Aeon Reaver looks like it's going to find some success. Grand Lackey Urk is a 4-star card. Winged Guardian is a 3-star card. Air Raid is a 4-star card. Aeon Reaver is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. If I'm being honest, I wish I could give like all of these cards maybe 3.5 stars, maybe not Winged Guardian. It's probably a true 3 or maybe a 2.5. But for Air Raid, Aeon Reaver, and Grand Lackey Bro here, I think they're all kind of 3.5 stars or maybe not quite clean 4s. But nonetheless, the power level has been going up in these expansions. Maybe these will do some work. That said, a couple things. If you haven't yet joined my 2020 giveaway, we're down to like 5 days to go, running out of time. Check the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. Just go follow me on Twitter and Discord. You'll get some entries, but you got to follow that link to do that process to make sure they're counted. So check that out. Otherwise, share your thoughts on these cards. Stay tuned for hopefully more card reviews for Galakrond's Awakening. But until then, thanks much for watching, and until next time, game on.